Well, welcome back, everyone. It's a real treat today for me to welcome two individuals that most of you probably have heard of. If you've heard of Honest Tea, and what an amazing name, you've definitely heard of Seth and Professor Barry. And it's a pleasure to have them with us today. So, gentlemen, one on the train, one in their office. Great to be with you.
Great to be here.
All right.
That's Barry.
Yours is a remarkable story, obviously, of glory and of guts, right? And I wish that we could have the time to talk about everything. But all of this started because you guys were creating something for yourself. And obviously, you did that. Is that a lesson in and of itself for entrepreneurs out there?
This is Barry. You think about the story of the Princess of the Pea. And the moral people often say is, well, get over it. There's this pea 10 matches below you. Stop worrying about the irritation. But I take away a different lesson, which is if you find something that's annoying you, that's the seed of a great business idea. And so the fact that we were annoyed because we couldn't find anything we wanted to drink is what got us all started.
And Seth, I mean, you were the instigator.
Yes. Yeah, and I was thirsty, and I just felt like if I'm thirsty for this, and Barry's thirsty for this, and my wife is thirsty for this, and everyone I talk to agrees that a lot of these drinks out there are just too sweet, I figured there had to be some kind of an opportunity out there, and this was one I was passionate about, so I was willing to take a bet on it.
Well, you guys not only take a bet, but you've improved many, many lives. We'll talk about that in a minute. There were certainly lots of missteps. There were certainly lots of sleepless nights, but you survived them because you guys had the big picture right. Paint that for us.
Yeah, so this is, the big picture was we really knew we wanted to create a meaningfully different product. And the challenge, of course, when you create a meaningfully different product is that if that's not where the market is, then there's a lot of pressure to conform. So pressure to make the drink sweeter, pressure to make the drink less expensive by getting rid of the organic ingredients. And for us, we knew while that might be a short-term path to growth, it wasn't what was going to build a meaningful long-term brand. And that was what we were able to stick to.
And Seth, how did you maintain that level of foresight when I'm assuming lots of people around you told you it ain't going to work because people don't want that? We're not that health conscious yet at that time.
Well, that goes to the convictions behind it, which was we believed in it. So if you have a belief system, it makes it that much easier to hold your convictions and to hold your ground. And we didn't get into this. We got into this because we wanted something different. And for that matter, as we think about the consumer, the consumer with a sweet tooth had plenty of options. But for the consumer who's now become the Honest Tea consumer, they didn't have many options.
And Professor,
and those
is that
consumers were telling us that they did love what we were doing. So we were getting the feedback from our consumers that we had tapped into a need.
And I was going to say that a lot of your students, I'm assuming, still have those types of issues. And when you live it like you do, your approach to it is probably a little bit different. I mean, is it totally customer-centric?
Well, I think that's half the problem, or half the opportunity, which is you find a hole in the market, then you have to ask, why is there a hole? Is that an opportunity, or is that something you don't want to fall into? But even having found something that's a great idea, then you have to ask, why should you be the one who does it? That is this a good business idea for you, or is it something that Coke and Pepsi should do? And that's something where a lot of entrepreneurs go wrong.
Right off the bat, you guys make a commitment to create a socially responsible business. How did that influence your thinking early on and obviously now?
Well, it's always been for us about trying to create a model of business that does business differently. And so it really was, when Barry came up with the name Honest, that for me kind of made it all click. I knew I wanted to help bring the market a less sweet drink. And then Honest, the Honest brand name, helped really make it an underpinning, made it all come together. And so that has been that's a pretty heavy name to live up to. And so for us, we've had to make sure we could develop the product and the things we did that in a way that lived up to that.
And Barry, was it an advantage to gain mindshare early on when you guys knew that the deep down the commitment for you was social responsibility?
I think it was just part of the whole process, the whole product. That is, when your name is Honest Tea, people expect it to be organic, they expect you to be fair trade, they expect you to be transparent, they expect you to have a commitment to social mission. And so the fact that everything was all aligned was, I think, an essential part of what our product strategy was.
Well, a lot of people talk the part.
Absolutely, and by calling ourselves Honest Tea, we invited people to challenge us and to keep us honest.
The guts part was evident from the beginning because, Seth, you decided to go all in with no fallback plan, right? That must have taken a heck of a lot of guts and you know what. Tell me about that.
Yeah, and we cover this in the book where I'm sitting with Barry and I'm sort of about to go hand in my resignation to a place where I was working, which was a great place, a wonderful organization. But I knew if I was going to make the leap, I had to really make the leap. And I said to Barry, okay, I'm going to do this. Are you sure we're going to be able to make the tea? We've never made the tea before. And Barry said, well, I bet if you asked to go on a sabbatical, I bet you they'd be open to that. And I said, no, that's not what I wanted to hear. But I had been around enough other entrepreneurial ideas and I'd say tinkered with them that I knew that if this is going to really work, I needed to be all in. There was no way I was going to get investors and employees and others to join if I had sort of my bets covered elsewhere. Which is a heck of a model for all of us. But tell me, how did you start to gain comfort with that uncertainty? Barry had a job, right? School wasn't going to get rid of him. You didn't.
Yeah. I'm not sure he ever got comfortable.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not sure you should be comfortable.
I'll let you. I'll let you. Yeah, exactly. There has to be. There's an element of fear that entrepreneurs have to have, and I would say for me, it sometimes got a little too much. But you really have to be. When there's a fear, you work that much harder. And so. We never, even today as a business, we still feel like a challenger brand, and we want to feel like a challenger brand. If we're the big established player, then we've lost that spark, that desire that helps fuel so much of our creativity and all that we do.
And Professor, I assume you give your students similar advice, right? To dive in slowly into a venture like that, or has it changed?
Well, I think at some point you absolutely have to be all in, and the question is, how far do you go? How much research do you go before deciding to make that commitment?
And there's always a lot of talk about the first 100 days or the first, the early part of a startup. Can you guys tell us what your most important priorities were during that first quarter?
Yeah. And actually, in our book, we document. We sort of literally go sort of day one, day two. Here's what happened. Here's what happened.
And I love it, by the way.
One of the most important, I think, on day one, the most important keystroke I did was to delete the solitaire game on my computer. That was like the opening starter. And then from there, writing the business plan. And within the first 30 days, we got both the business plan written. We also got the appointment to make the call on Whole Foods that led to our first sales opportunity. So it was a pretty intensive period, but it needed to be. And one interesting thing, we started the company in February of 1998 with the goal of getting to the shelf by the iced tea season, call that May 31st or June 1st of that year. That's a very short time frame, but that forced us to be productive. It forced us to be effective. And even though with the product, we did make it to the shelf, it wasn't the best product we've made, but we got there, and from there we could continue to improve it.
Professor.
Can I just underline that 26 days from starting a company to making your first sale really is land record speed.
It is pretty damn fast. But what were the most important metrics that you wanted to measure? Because you come at it you guys complement one another brilliantly, but for you, being in your role, what did you want to measure, during that first quarter?
I think the answer was, first, let's take our absolutely dead center target customer, the Whole Foods buyer. If we can't convince this person that we've created the right beverage, we have fundamentally misunderstood what we're trying to accomplish. So make the product for our target customer and see that the person really likes it. Make a label that communicates what we're about so that you understand we're simple, authentic, honest, and then lastly, figure out how to make it so that we're going from our kitchen to making it 10,000 times as much. And those were the objectives. And if we hit all of those in the first quarter, that would be great, and we did.
And that's pretty damn impressive. You guys, as I just mentioned, you complement one another brilliantly, and we hear so much about two co-founders going in together, and that's a big underlining to success. How did you define your roles early on?
Well, I had the simplest role in the world. My job was to make Seth successful. Because if he would succeed, I would succeed. And so what that often meant in my case was keeping him focused on running the business. So I might be able to take more of the heavy lifting initially for fundraising. Or if somebody needed to be the bad guy, I could be the bad guy and people could continue to love Seth, which is easy since he's such a lovable guy.
And before we launched the company, I went up and spent a day at Barry's house in New Haven, and we sat across his kitchen table and we talked out not just sort of what was going to happen in the first year, but what would we want to have happen in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and what was sort of the big picture. And that really helped us be clear about what our goals were. And I've seen a lot of companies sort of founder when 2 or 3 years in, one founder says, well, I wanted to sell and go off and travel the world, and the other one was like, I was going to own this forever. And they didn't work that out in advance, and it just baffles me. So we were very clear. We had a very clear understanding of what each other, both brought to the enterprise as well as what we were each hoping to get out of it.
Seth, can you take me inside that first Whole Foods buyer meeting?
Sure. So Barry and I had made 5 thermoses of tea. We had gotten in my kitchen. We had gotten an empty Snapple bottle, and we pasted a label on it. And we went to the buyer. I went to the buyer, and I mapped out for him what his beverage shelf was. I said, here's all the options on your shelf, and here's the calorie profile of each drink. And what it showed was that he's got a ton of drinks in the 100-calorie range and a ton of drinks in the 0-calorie range, but there was nothing in the middle. And I said, we want to capture that middle space. We think you're a consumer, is a health-conscious consumer who doesn't want all that sugar, and so we think there's an opportunity. And the buyer said, we'll give it a try. What surprised me was when he said, we'll take 15,000 bottles, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking we've never made more than these 5 thermoses of tea. But I said,
actually,
great,
he also said he wanted those bottles for free. And that also surprised me.
That's true. Yeah, he said, hey, you make the first delivery and I'll pay you for whatever I order after that. And I said, well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm excited, but I can't give anything away for free. The whole company is me and these thermoses. The thermoses technically are on loan from Barry, so I've got to you got to pay for everything you buy.
And he did.
He did, and to his, to our great appreciation, he, came through and kept expanding the distribution of the product, and eventually we reached the rest of the Whole Foods stores.
Well, and I remember I'm from DC, so I walked into the Whole Foods that you guys were sampling this back in the late 90s. So I was one of the early consumers. But Professor, I want to turn to you for a second, because what's the lesson here for entrepreneurs who are selling an unknown, unproven product to such a potentially game-changing client?
First, your product can't be a me too, can't be 10% better. It has to be 100% better, because your costs going to be worse, your production's going to be worse, your distribution's going to be worse. And so you're going to need your customers to be insistent, passionate, go to the buyer and say, you have to carry this product. I want you to stock it in more prominent place. I need you to have more inventory of this. Unless your customers actually care about what you're doing, unless they tell people about what you're doing and share with your friends, you have no ability to get word out, because you don't have any money for advertising. And so the way you need to make it happen is you have to get your customers to care so much that they'll do the hard work for you. And that only happens if they really understand how special your product is.
Your packaging tells a story, and it's one of the most important marketing collaterals that I've seen out there in products. And again, it helps hone the message. You guys took that seriously, a lot more serious early on than a lot of others do. What does that tell us about learning to hone your message from the beginning? Well, and
what's fun about in the book, we really take the reader through each step, sort of the different options we considered, and it is part of what you are able to. When you get to a place, it's part of deciding what you don't include, and so for us, we kept trying to cut away any extraneous information just to sharpen the proposition, and especially with a small company like ours, that basically our package was the only marketing we did. I mean, aside from the sampling where we met people in stores, other than that, the package was our whole marketing campaign, so it had to work really hard.
And
you were lucky that one of my other students, a fellow named Matt Littlejohn, is just terrific at copywriting and helped us. really hone our message down.
And I want to talk about the marketing for 1 second, but Barry, one of the things too that was really critical from the beginning is there was no pressure sales, right? You went, you sampled, people took a tiny cup, they drank it, they liked it, they bought it, they didn't, there were no pressure. Again, is that kind of that introduction to that product with that no pressure strategy, was that part from the beginning of what you guys wanted to do?
I'm not sure there was no pressure so much as you could tell somebody as much as you want about this product, but ultimately, as soon as they taste it, they get it. And either they like it or they don't. If they don't like it, plenty of other products for them out there. But if they did like it, we were it. And they understood what we were trying to achieve, and they wanted to come back. They totally bought into it because, like us, they were thirsty and couldn't find anything they wanted to drink either.
Your marketing team, you started with 2 MBA interns. Were they the first 2?
They were, yeah. They were just our marketing team. They were also our operations team and our sales team and our real estate location teams. We started as a very, sort of bootstrap operation, and as we grew, we expanded. But actually, we've continued to hire MBA interns ever since those very first summer.
And Seth, when did your hiring strategy start to pick up, and how did you manage that financially?
It was really only as we sort of saw the sales opening up. So we tried never to hire somebody in front of sales. But if we, for example, got a distributor in a market who was interested in coming on board, then we'd hire the salesperson to pay for it. But I'd say that to the extent we did make mistakes, it was sometimes we may hire someone and said, let's go find a distributor in the market. But without a willing distributor, no matter how good your salesperson is, it's very hard to build distribution. So we really have tried to find, where the opportunities are, we'll try to invest in it. And it's been a very organic growth rate. I mean, we're at about 112 employees here today, and it's still one where, we feel like every person pays for at least for himself or herself.
Which is something that we can all learn from as entrepreneurs. Professor, you decided to take a radical approach to raising money, in particular valuing the company. Describe that for me.
Well, typically when you start up, you have no sales, so you make up a story saying how you're going to get to 50 million sales in 5 years, and that's why the company's worth a couple $100 million. But it's all made up, and you've written it down in PowerPoint and Excel, but that doesn't mean it's real. And then you say, well, okay, although it's going to be worth a couple $100 million, I want to raise money at $5 million today, which suggests you don't really believe, or nobody believes, that the company's going to be worth as much as you said it is. And so that doesn't make any sense to me. Instead, what we did is we said, okay, we're going to pretend the company's worth nothing now. If you put in $1 million, the company's worth $1 million you put in and nothing more. However, if we double the value of the company, then Seth and I get to start sharing in the participation. If we triple it, quadruple it, 5 times it, 10 times it, we'll get shares at that point going forward. So only to the extent that we achieve this 10 times return that we say we can get, are we going to go and share in the upside. If you only double your money, you get it all ahead of us. And so, in essence, what we said is we're putting our investors ahead of ourselves, but we're so confident that we can create something that values it that we're willing to do it that way.
And that's a similar strategy that you took when it was time when Coke came knocking.
Absolutely. So we thought that we could bring the company up to $100 million in sales, and so our view was that we wanted to help to achieve that, but this is what we could do on our own, and that we should get rewarded for what we could do even without their help.
I want to pick up a question, and we get the privilege to work with a lot of terrific founders who are building game-changing businesses, and I can't find 2 individuals that are as appropriate to ask some of these questions to as you guys. I want to pick one that is a terrific social gaming company in Southern California who's they're developing game-changing technology. And as I look at their trajectory, their biggest question is, how do they maintain that nimbleness, that innovative mindset when they start to grow, as they're starting to feel that exponential growth? You guys went through it. What advice do you have for them?
Well, it really is driven by your culture. So it starts with your own leadership, and then who you bring in as your senior leadership, and do they get it? And so often when we find companies try to get to scale, they'll bring in they feel the need to bring in a large person with corporate experience because they understand how big corporations think. Well, that's really the problem. When they bring in someone who thinks like a big corporation, no wonder what the organization loses some of its roots. And so that doesn't mean we haven't brought on some people, who have larger experience, but they've got to be able to function in an entrepreneurial environment. And in our organization, it's one big open office. So it's pretty clear whether or not if someone's used to the closed office and the quiet room or or even cubicles, they won't last a week in our office. So in a way, it's the environment and the culture is kind of self-fulfilling, and it really first of all, people screen themselves out, or it screens people out, and then certainly the way we act and behave fulfills it.
And I can go ahead.
One thing that we do is really use the market more directly than market research. So it's possible for us to go and bring a new flavor to the market without having to spend $50,000 on market research. And then we'll see, does the market like it as much as we do? And if it does, it stays. And if it doesn't, okay, we'll try something else.
Which is at the heart of a lot of the lean startup movements that's going on here in Southern California. I know your time's limited, and I don't want to lose you, Professor, but I have a couple more questions that I know that I'd like you to participate. You guys started considering building a board in 2000, 3 years into the business, or 2.5 years. What's a good gauge for startups to consider putting together a board?
I think one challenge is that you want to be able to find board members who really add value. And if you're sufficiently small, then it's going to be hard to attract people to do that. But if you have a personal relationship with someone, or if there's some social mission associated with it, you really want to be seeking out mentors who could become board members for you. Because it's not just having a board for the sake of having a board. It's really having a board whose members you trust and who can add value.
And for us, one indicator is we had become the fastest selling tea in the natural foods industry. So even though we were still relatively small, we could point to potential board members and say, this is a brand that's going places, and we want you to get on, as we try to expand our presence beyond natural foods. So that was and in addition, the board members that we brought on were all people who really appreciated our product. So it made it easy for them to appreciate the big upside opportunity.
Seth, in the book, you talk about two questions that guided your thinking early on. Why will it succeed at first, and why will it continue to succeed once others copy it? Tell me a little bit about how that still guides your thinking, because you're being copied all over the place to this day.
Sure. Well, look, the marketplace is so crowded, and even though we are much larger than we were, it doesn't make sense for us to bring out products that are already out there. Our job as an innovator, and especially where we've started in the natural foods channel, we've got to be doing it. We've got to be bringing new products to market. It's what our consumers and our retailers expect of us. So, just a great example is what we did with Honest Kids. While the whole drink pouch market was out there at 100 calories, we took the kids' pouch drink and made it organic with only 40 calories. And it was so different that it quickly grabbed shelf space. And then, in terms of what would happen when others copy it, well, when we can be the first mover and already have that leading presence with the organics, Honest Kids, there have been a lot of who have followed, but Honest Kids continues to lead because we've already developed that brand equity, and we've continued to further innovate with the brand. So it's still something that informs how we innovate and what we bring out.
Professor, you have something to add?
I think when you're starting out, you're all focused on that first question, which is literally, how are you going to have this great product that's going to get some shelf space? But the challenge of what's going to happen when it's out there and everybody knows what you're doing, how will you continue to succeed when copied, or why other people won't copy you? That's really a critical question, and I think should stop many businesses before they get started. So before thinking of Honest Tea, we thought about mixing orange juice and club soda. But in the end, I think that just would have been test marketing for Minute Maid and Tropicana. So while it's a great product, I'm not sure it's a great product for small startup to do. Now, today, if somebody copies Honest Tea, Seth has the resources to really get distribution out there. His production is done first rate, and so that is a fair fight. But when you're starting out and somebody copies you who's bigger and better capitalized, that's what you don't want to have happen.
And Seth, obviously, you see that you started out in your kitchen, and now, and 1998 wasn't that long ago, right? So now you guys are part of a tremendous, brand and an amazing company that you guys are working with now. How has your roles as leaders evolved from the beginning to now, as you guys are focused on accelerating growth?
Well, there's no question the scale is different. I mean, we're now when Coke invested back in 2008, Honest Tea was in 15,000 stores. Today, we're in over 100,000 stores, and our reach, our opportunity for reach is much larger. So I would say I'm doing a little bit less direct sales, a little bit less calling on distributors, and more trying to influence people within the Coke organization, influence buyers at retail stores, not just to carry the product, but to give the product priority, or to help them appreciate the upside, the fact that we're still ahead of our time, and this is where consumers are headed. So, and then frankly, this book that we publish is a great way for us to influence, not just spread the word about our brand, but to help influence the way business evolves and try to bring along a new generation of entrepreneurs who can think about business in a different way, and who are interested in creating products and brands that will emerge and capture the imagination of larger opportunities and larger corporations. And
your role continues to be to teach, but how has your involvement changed?
So I'm now back at Yale full time, and as Seth pointed out, my job is to share what we've learned. And so we took 15 years worth of experiences. We spent 2 years writing this book. It's not just a history of the company. It's really a guide for anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, who is an entrepreneur, who has a dream. Because we lay out how it is you get started, how you raise the money, how you create the labels, the image, the brand, how it is you deal with distribution, what you should expect, because it's going to be hard, and a person who understands what to look forward to, make sure they have the commitment before they get started. So we're an open source kind of company. We basically have an open playbook. We want others to be able to live the dream that we were able to do.
And let me just echo something before we end this. There really isn't a whole lot of books like this out there, obviously in structure and style, but also in content. 2 more questions for you guys. When you got your first Coke distributor, did you have any inclination what was going to happen with that?
It was definitely a pinch me moment. I remember making that sales presentation and saying, you guys have no, from where we've come, where it was just brutal begging distributors to carry our product, to be with the best distribution system in the world. It was really amazing. And they did they reached all the kind of stores we always hoped to reach. So, and for them, they were excited. They understood the opportunity, and they'd certainly heard from their customers that the customer wanted products like Honest Tea, and it was just a very exciting moment.
And Barry,
so I will point out that Coke distributor was in Buffalo, which is not necessarily the iced tea drinking capital of the
world. No, it's not. But hey, right after the 4th of July in 2007, when you got a glimpse of Coke's interest, obviously others started to follow. But here's where you fall back on your mantra and on your values, because your decision to go with them was, based on a lot of other factors than just dollars and cents.
Right. Yeah, it's really about who's going to help us realize our vision for the brand, and who is willing to partner with us in a way where they don't have to come in and take over the brand right away, who's going to be patient to let us continue to grow it in a way that we don't lose what's important, the essence of the brand, the essence of the team. And that was certainly the case with Coca-Cola.
And Professor, can I get you to comment before we end on, again, the structure of the deal? Because this is something that's really important for entrepreneurs who get approached like that. You're structured the deal in the same vein as you did raising money.
A little bit. I think the challenge, normally if the deal was done, you think about what comparables would be, what the market is. We did something weird in the sense that we only sold 40% of the company up front because we were having too much fun. We weren't ready to give up control. And so we had to think about how to value the company in 3 years as opposed to how to value the company today. And I teach negotiation, and so one of the theories that we use is, okay, what is it that we could have done on our own, and what is it that we can do with Coca-Cola? And to the extent that we could do this on our own, we should get rewarded for that all by ourselves. And to the extent that we could do it with Coke, well, we should split those rewards. And so we came up with a simple conceptual framework right up at the start. And from there, there was a little bit of discussion back and forth about how much we could have done on our own versus with them, but we at least agreed to a general framework. And I think having a principle for a negotiation made all the difference. I like to say there's nothing so practical as good theory, and so this book is different from other business books because not only do you get all of Seth's practical advice, but you also get economic theory to go with it.
Well, hey, you guys are amazing individuals. I can't thank you enough for, one, taking the time, but more importantly, for writing the book. And in addition to drinking a hell of a lot of honest tea, give a plug for the book. How can people find it, and what's the website?
The website is missioninabottle.net. And, of course, it's also available at Amazon and most other bookstores, chain and independent bookstores. And then, of course, the website for Honest Tea is honesttea.com.
And, Professor, students are going to be flocking back to Yale because you're back.
I never left. So there you go.
Thank you for your time, guys.
Great. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for having me.